Donald Trump said that I should be arrested. He said that I should be deported. He said that I should be denaturalized. And he said those things about me, someone who stands to be the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, someone who would also be the first Muslim and the first South Asian mayor in this city's history. Less so because of who I am, because of where I come from, because of how I look or how I speak, and more so because he wants to distract from what I fight for. I fight for working people. I fight for the very people that have been priced out of this city, and I fight for the same people that he said he was fighting for. This is the same president who ran on a campaign of cheaper groceries, who ran on a campaign about easing a suffocating cost of living crisis. And ultimately, it is easier for him to fan the flames of division than to acknowledge the ways in which he has betrayed those working class Americans, not just in this city, but across this country, and the ways in which he continues to betray them. Because we know that he would rather speak about me than speak about the legislation that he is shepherding through Washington, D.C. Legislation that will quite literally take healthcare away from Americans. Legislation that will steal food from the hungry. Legislation that looks to build upon one of the largest transfers of wealth we've seen in recent history in his first administration and do it once again for the very Americans who already have enough. We should be fighting for those that do not have what they need to live a dignified life. That is what I will do.
The amount of coworkers I heard saying, hell yeah, man, we get no tax on overtime while not caring about everything else, like 17 million people who will lose healthcare as we benefit from great healthcare that is to the union, has made me really sad and disgusted today. Yeah, I think like the lack of solidarity amongst many working class Americans also it comes from the lack of hope and the conditions worsening overall for every single person. Right? Everybody has a fuck you, I got mine mentality in this process. And they're almost proud of it too. And a part of that is because there is no, like, solidarity has yielded nothing. And there hasn't really been any real solidarity demonstrated anyway. But from their estimation, solidarity is meaningless. It's gotten people nowhere. So there is no hope. We are just increasingly atomized, increasingly self-interested. It's like Parasite. It's extra crazy because you got people in a union. Of course, when there is no real labor education and no real investment in labor militancy, you are going to arrive at people who are just so pessimistic and so individualistic that they're just like, yeah, it's great. We already have our union that fought long and hard for a contract, so we have decent healthcare. So this Medicaid stuff is not going to impact us. We are already above the fiscal cliff that kicks in for all the social safety nets as a consequence of our collective bargaining agreements. So then, you know, we get to have a little bit of extra money in terms of take home pay at the end of the month. This is the reason why these bills are crafted in the way that they are. It is exactly to get that kind of reaction from different groups, offering some modest benefits to different groups, seemingly modest benefits. It is a way to continue dividing and conquering the working class.
And I am thankful to have the protection and to have the support of so many New Yorkers who have stood up and said how unacceptable this is, including our governor, including members of the labor movement. And ultimately, what I fear for is that if this is what Donald Trump and his administration feel comfortable about saying about the Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City, imagine what they feel comfortable saying and doing about immigrants whose names they don't even know.
Yeah.
Stand to benefit the most. Now, the White House argues that the tax cuts in this bill.
I'm a mail carrier and I can 100% parrot the previous chatter. I try to advocate in the office, but so many people are elated about the overtime tax cuts and can't see the immediate harm it will do to the very people we serve every day. Not to mention that all this furthers an agenda that will directly come after us and our unionized positions as well. That's the other thing. It's not just overtime pay, right? This is how they justified the previous tax cuts as well. The 2017 tax cuts that are supposed to sunset, right? They got that across not by saying the wealthy deserve to bring home more of the fucking earnings that they deliver year after year because they're the most productive members of society. They were able to justify that by saying you get a tax cut too. But your tax cuts are marginal. Your tax cuts are ultimately inconsequential. On the benefit side, what they are shredding is far more consequential for you and others in your situation than the $2 a month that you get. Yeah, here's the other side of this as well. What's more, in this GOP Medicaid cuts, they wrote the parts with micro tax breaks for everyday people. Example, tax on tips up to $25K, salt, etc., to be temporary and expire in 5 years. But the huge tax breaks they're giving the billionaires and corporations, they're making those permanent. They did this last time as well. But because this kind of stuff is ultimately confusing, there's a lot of confusion surrounding it. There's no good leadership on the Democratic Party side that is like effectively cutting through all of this noise and directly telling Americans like, this is how they're going to fuck you over. Americans are left rudderless. They're left confused, and they only see the like selfish, short-term gain that they perceive to be having in this situation. And then that's it.
Rule.
Dr. Roger Marshall, senator from Kansas, says we have set up a $50 billion rural health fund with this reconciliation bill. We are giving rural hospitals a lifeline to survive. AOC responds, the reason rural hospitals need this lifeline to begin with is because you're killing them. You mean hit and run Marshall? He ran over his neighbor?
The breaking news this morning, House lawmakers are scrambling now to get back to the Hill and vote on the now new version.
To your point, my father-in-law is a Republican ex-New Jersey judge who complains that his son never brings his kids to visit in Florida because he's always working, but he's against all handouts except this fucking no tax on overtime bullshit. Absolutely stupid. Yeah, there is a severe crisis in the collective consciousness of Americans that was born in the Reagan starving the beast era. Reaganomics never went away, even though we completely understand that it was a failure. It was an abject failure. And many people will point to Ronald Reagan as like a bad person and a responsible party for this. It still doesn't matter. There's plenty of fucking Gen X people in the lead generation that, one, think that this mentality is still good. The rising tide lifts all boats, right? That's like number one. That's one of the biggest fucking annoying tropes that you hear from that era. And then the other idea is like, I don't want the government to give me a handout. I got to work hard. Okay. It's like, you're already working hard. The point is the government is literally giving you less. You shouldn't even need, in a perfect working system, you wouldn't even need any sort of additional government help because you would have all of your needs covered. And some of these should not even be up to the profit incentive anyway. Some of the things that the government is supposed to offer unconditionally is offered already to every single citizen unconditionally in other OECD nations, right? Like healthcare or education. These are things that the government is supposed to provide for all of its people unconditionally. But the most damaging and prevailing attitude from the Reaganomics era is this starving of the beast. The government is this beast. The government does not actually help you at all. The scariest words that any American can ever hear is, I'm here from the government. I'm here to help. This kind of attitude has persisted throughout time. where Americans, slowly but surely, through the erosion of the social safety nets, through the numerous decades erosion of their material conditions, have realized or have come to the conclusion that the government doesn't help them. And they're kind of right to feel that way. There's no more, there's no trust in the government, okay? Even though in many invisible ways the government is actively working, and it's a behemoth that makes sure that your fucking, for example, your meat is not tainted and it's not poisonous when you purchase it at the grocery store, or that you know when a tornado is supposed to hit your neighborhood ahead of time, right? Like those are the invisible ways in which the government is actually working. And you only recognize that it's not working when the government fails. The only way you pay attention to the function of the government is when it actually fails, and it has been failing in spectacular fashion, especially in these past couple of months. You know, planes falling out of the sky and whatnot. So Americans do not believe that the government is actually doing anything that benefits them. There's no more trust and no more belief that the government is actually here to help them. This creates a unique predicament. This makes it much easier to starve the government. Why am I giving taxes to the government if they're not fixing the fucking potholes? Okay? Why am I giving taxes to the government if they're not taking care of the homelessness problem? Not realizing that it is precisely this self-interested, hyper-individualistic attitude that has allowed the reactionary forces, both in the Democratic Party and in the Republican Party, to cut away all of these programs that were supposed to help people, that were supposed to stop someone from falling victim to homelessness. Regulations in the housing market that's supposed to make sure that the housing market is stable so that people don't actually get priced out of their housing, whether it's rent or lose their homes altogether if they were lucky enough to purchase one. But neoliberalism is so, what is this? Stop downplaying the American people like they're all fucking dumb, selfish hogs. They are hardworking, desperate, and trying to survive. Come on. Wait, what? Like, have you guys worked in customer service? Do you have a broken car? Do you have kids that need new clothes and only one job to support them? Have you been desperate? Is this selfish thought or survival mindset? No, what are you saying? That's you're agreeing with me. I'm describing the process in which, over the course of multiple decades, Americans have arrived at this like vicious cycle of austerity and how that has motivated them to selfish ways of thinking, to hyper-individualistic ways of thinking. That's my point. And now you have entire swaths of the population advocating for their own demise. No population of a country is just dumb across the board. They're not like stupid and selfish. They are made to be stupid and self-interested. Neoliberalism is the idea that the government should involve itself in the economy and social services as little as necessary. To Dems, that means it still provides some services. That's their minimum. And to the GOP, it's virtually no services. But they're still both interested in making it the minimum. That's neoliberal hegemony. It's not just that. It's more nefarious than that. Neoliberalism implies that government intervention is a necessity to break up state-owned enterprise, for example, or to use government intervention in order to let the free market manifest itself. That's precisely the reason why neither party will ever actually go against subsidies for corporations. That's government incentives for corporations. As long as there is public-private partnership and as long as private enterprise thrives, everyone is happy. Neoliberalism isn't like pure libertarianism. A lot of people misunderstand it. Neoliberalism is about government intervention in the direction of expanding the free market. which is oxymoronic. It makes people, it obviously on its face, you're like, what do you mean? Government intervention or no intervention, right? No, neoliberalism dictates that government intervention is sometimes a necessity as long as it actually improves profit margins. This is precisely the reason why neither the Democrats nor the Republicans will oftentimes go after subsidies for all of these major corporations. Like, for example, under the Trump administration or any other administration, this has happened in times of crisis, right? Obama, 2008, restoration project for the economy. What did we do under Obama? We offered bailouts to companies that directly went back to the corporate structure, as opposed to overtaking some of these companies and forcing the state to operate them in the same way that, like, the FDIC kicks in when a bank actually is on the verge of insolvency. Okay? We didn't do that. We didn't do an FDIC style measure because that was terrifying. How dare we fucking regulate adequately these companies that were engaging in predatory loans and knowingly fucking crippled the housing market, knowingly destroyed the housing market, created this massive bubble, right? So, on the other side of things, when COVID took place, Donald Trump also did the same thing with Boeing and with all of these other major corporations. Instead of saying, hey, you guys did not take the adequate measures and take a more defensive posture, and instead took all of this money and then used it in the form of stock buybacks, which once again shouts out to Ronald Reagan, used to be illegal. Since Ronald Reagan, not illegal. It used to be considered market manipulation, right? Now it's not. It's perfectly legal and perfectly permissible. Instead of government intervention in the direction of overtaking these corporations and like running them at the behest of the public, they just gave massive bailouts to these companies in order to let the pre-existing for-profit capitalist way of business to continue.
Of Trump's massive tax cut and spending bill before their self-imposed
SPED means special education. He's just being ableist.
Friday deadline. The bill is becoming really something of a ping pong ball. The House voted first, then the Senate voted and made changes, and so now the House must vote again. And if they make further changes, you get where this is headed. With this, House Speaker Mike Johnson is facing another major test of his power. Many House Republicans are publicly voicing serious doubts about the Senate changes. That includes steeper cuts to Medicaid and a nearly $1 trillion increase in the deficit over the House's version. Johnson can only afford to lose 3 GOP votes. The speaker says that he's confident a final vote could come today. But back to that scrambling, they are literally also scrambling to physically get back to the Capitol as bad weather canceled a whole bunch of flights for many lawmakers that are trying to make it back in. Here's the speaker last night.
Well, we're having weather delays getting everybody back right now, but assuming we have a full House, we'll get it through the Rules Committee in the morning. We'll move that forward to the floor, and hopefully...
It's crazy that, like, the average person's capacity for change here is basically akin to a fucking peasant in the medieval ages, just opening up your hands and demanding that the sky gods do divine intervention. Like, that's the maximum amount of power that we have. We just, like, sit around, right? This is supposed to be a democracy. There's supposed to be a structure of pressure, a mechanism of pressure, a mechanism of pushback, a social contract that demands, that dictates that the people that we are voting into office are supposed to represent our best interests, right? But instead, we have the exact same structure that the fucking the peasants had in terms of implementing change in the goddamn feudal monarchies, where we just have to hope that, like, God takes care of it, okay? Some divine power takes care of the problem. Shut the fuck up. I voted for this. You did? You voted for this? You voted for 17 million people getting kicked off of Medicaid coverage? You voted for your grandparents to no longer be able to fucking live in a nursing home? I'm a masochist. It's so funny. When people learn about what's in this bill, by the way, it becomes immensely unpopular. The only reason why there's any sort of fucking confusion here, or any sort of like any sort of defense of any of these measures in here, is because most people are oblivious to the downsides, to the immediate negative consequences that are baked into this big, beautiful bill. And therein lies the problem with messaging on the opposition party, the Democrats.
We're voting on this by tomorrow or Thursday at latest.
CNN's Arlette Saenz is at the Capitol for us this morning. And Arlette, it did make it through the Rules Committee while we were all sleeping. So set the stage for what is going to happen today.
Well, Kate, it could be another long slog ahead as lawmakers are 2 days away from that deadline to pass President
Brandon Duke, tax budget nerd, center on budget, former Biden-Harris National Economic Council tax budget supply chain guy, okay, says this bill will make 60% of the country poorer so we can shrink the economy by 4.6% over the next 30 years is one heck of an accomplishment. This is what the Penn-Wharton budget model found. We estimate that the Senate-passed reconciliation bill increases primary deficits by $3.1 trillion over 10 years. The dynamic cost, including changes to the economy, is larger than $3.5 trillion. GDP falls by 0.3 in 10 years and falls by 4.6 in 30 years. So it doesn't even do the thing that Republicans will cynically claim it does, which is to expand the economy. I mean, I personally don't give a shit about all that as much, aside from the actual impact that it will have on the working poor. But that also adds insult to injury. That is the great irony here as well. Incredible stuff. Will China bail us out? Is this good? No.
Trump's domestic agenda bill. As you mentioned, it passed through the Rules Committee just last overnight, clearing a key procedural hurdle. It received 2 no votes from Republicans, Chip Roy and Ralph Norman, who have expressed reservations about this bill. But this will be a major test once again for House Speaker Mike.
Hey, at least the billionaires will be richer, you stinking socialist. True, 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 true. My bad. My mistake. My mistake for not talking about the real minority, the only minority, the real POWs. Okay, the real POCs, people of capital, real POWs, people of wealth. Okay, my bad. My bad. My mistake. Get your money up, not your funny up, guys. Wow, I guess you don't care about minorities. You know? After all, what is a bigger minority than literally the top 1% of the 1%?
Johnson, as he is trying to hold his GOP conference together to get this bill across the finish line. Now, there are various factions that they are trying to appease here. There are those more conservative lawmakers who believe that this does not do enough to cut spending. And there are others who are concerned.
That's my favorite type. That's my favorite archetype. Guy who's like, we need to melt more poor people. And it's such a weird predicament that like those are the guys who have the most motion, the ideological zealots that want to fucking basically strap an IED to this fucking bill because it doesn't kill enough poor people. And those are our only fucking option of spiking the football, at least so that people can hopefully communicate how devastating this bill is in the long run. Taking advantage of congressional gridlock, hopefully with a competent enough opposition party
about the steeper cuts to Medicaid that were made in the Senate plan. So that highlights the various ways they're going to have to try to stitch together support to pass this bill. Now, any changes that are made to this bill would then require it to go back to the Senate, and that is something that House leadership and President Trump are trying to avoid. But here's a sample of some of the concerns about the process, about the bill itself, that have been expressed by GOP lawmakers over the last 24 hours.
So this whole thing is, I don't know what to call it. It's a show.
My colleagues in the Senate failed us.
My goat. Talk to him, Chip. Talk to him, Chip. Talk about how little the working poor is being killed in this bill, and more working poor must be killed, okay? We need to put more orphans in the orphan crushing machine. Not enough orphans are in the orphan crushing machine. Talk to him, Chip. My goat.
My colleagues in the Senate failed us.
I think the founders and the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence would be astounded that we're adding debt to our children grandchildren.
Yeah, more debt. This is unacceptable. We need to cut more. We need to cut more of the expenditures. I think we should just make it illegal for there to be government-funded health care. Take it out, I say. The only money that the government should be spending is bullets for the military to line up every person that makes less than $250,000 and shoots them dead in the fucking head. They are not productive members of society. And if they want to be productive members of society, put them in a concentration camp and make them work for their meal. That's right. That and more bombs for Israel. Am Israel high.
Children who are defenseless.
Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes on this measure, a very narrow razor-thin majority that he is operating with. And we've already heard about dozens of lawmakers express concerns about this bill. Another issue that leadership is facing in this moment is that storms across the East Coast had delayed or canceled many of lawmakers' flights who are trying to return back to Washington. In fact, there are Democrats like Congressman Krishnamurthy out in Illinois, and then Republicans like South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who are physically driving to Washington to make sure that they can be here for this vote. The House right now is set to open at 9 a.m. At some point, there would be a vote on the rule related to the bill before they move to debate and then vote on final passage. Of course, it's not a guarantee that they will get the votes on that rule. So
do the rain dance. Do the rain dance. Pray to the gods. Pray to the gods that bad weather conditions don't permit enough congressional representatives to get into Congress to vote. We're praying for the rain dance, baby.
There will be a lot of high-stakes drama to watch over the course of the day as the House GOP leadership is trying to muscle this bill through the House to get it on President Trump's desk by Friday.
Arlette, thank you so much for kicking us off. It's going to get very busy there very, very soon. Put on your bingo card, guys. Weather delays adding to the fun.
I was going to say road trip, congressional road trip.
We do love a road trip.
Yeah, what could be more fun than a drive from Chicago to vote on this bill? All right, this morning, a senior White House official says that President Trump has already been working the phones trying to get House lawmakers to pass what he calls everyone's bill. The president is urging Republicans to unite and ignore the occasional grandstanders. Let's get to CNN's Kevin Liptak at the White House this morning. Where does the White House see things right now?
Yeah, there continues to be a lot of confidence in this building that this bill will eventually pass. Trump himself just said yesterday that he thought getting it through the House would actually be easier than the Senate. Despite all of this opposition that you see bubbling up, I think the gamble that they're making is that President Trump's arm twisting, that his pressure tactics will eventually cause these Republicans to get in line. And it's not as if they don't have history on their side here. There are not a lot of examples in recent memory of House Republicans not giving Trump what he wants, and they see what happened in the Senate as kind of a roadmap. You know, there were a number of Republicans who insisted that they were against this bill only to eventually vote yes when it came up on the floor. And so a lot of confidence in this building. one point that they're making is that they have been in continuous touch with the House Republicans throughout this process. They're not just starting to whip this bill now. They have been kind of on the hunt for votes over the last several weeks, even as the Senate was making changes. White House officials still view that Friday deadline as operable, even though President Trump sounded a little more flexible on it yesterday. We did hear from Russ Vought, who's the president's budget director, talking about how they're trying to get some Republicans in line. Listen to what he said.
If you were to take any part of this bill and just debate one part of it, you would have overwhelming support by all Republicans generally. It's all put together. And so we're trying to continue to educate on how much is being done and then the extent to which this is a part of a plan to get to a balanced budget over time.
So you hear that vote, they're talking about educating Republicans. President Trump has also been on the phone. He's been educating, but he's also been threatening, talking about primary challenges to Republicans who might oppose this package. I think the challenge that the president has in front of him is that there are two sort of polar sets of opposition to this bill, whether it's Republicans who think it explodes the deficit or Republicans who thinks that it cuts the social safety net too much. President Trump, I asked him on the South Lawn yesterday about some of the politics of all of this, and he said he didn't want Republicans to go too crazy with cuts. So they're, I think, still very sensitive to some of the politics that could be in play in all of this.
Yeah, he's educating them about how difficult he will make it for them politically if they vote against him. Kevin Liptak at the White House this morning. Keep us posted.
Zach, I want to start with you because I remember covering Congress, and all those last minute deals are what get you the votes you need. Murkowski voted for this bill. She's someone who people wondered, like, is she gonna, is she not? What do you think happened there?
Well, we know what happened. They gave.
Did we wonder that? Another 100 bones from open presents. Let's go. I wasn't wondering. This is classic Murkowski. Classic. Oh, I'm concerned. I'm looking into it. I'm concerned. Oh, nope, not that concerned.
Gave Alaska a bunch of stuff. Exemptions from SNAP cuts. They gave, there more money for Alaskan rural hospitals than for those in other states. And even I was reading, very specific tax deductions for, boat captains in Alaska. It was very simply the way politics used to work on Capitol Hill, and it feels a little gross these days. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, after they passed Obamacare and there was the Cornhusker kickback, there was a lot of outrage. It probably cost, Ben Nelson his job, the senator from Nebraska at the time. But there doesn't seem to be the same kind of outrage now just because Murkowski is this sort of, very unique lawmaker
and
on
caring
Capitol
about
Hill.
her state. But I want to turn to you, Kristen, because in a way we're kind of talking about winners and losers. Who were the people who kind of win, so to speak, out of this bill? Who less so? What do you see in that?
So the argument that Republicans are making is that when you talk about who's going to lose health care, who's going to lose benefits, the argument that Republicans on the Hill are making is that the people who are going to lose benefits are folks who are not legally authorized, allowed to be in the country, or folks who are able-bodied, working age, and are not working. And the real test is going to be, is that accurate? For things like work requirements for programs like Medicaid, is the paperwork too onerous? And therefore people who ought to qualify for these benefits just...
No. You don't have to start off by literally just lying at the behest of the Republicans. This is not a test. Like, your job as a media figure isn't to say, this is what the Republicans are saying, this is what the Democrats are saying. Your job is to, even if you're going to mention that, immediately frame it around the truth. You're supposed to go, Republicans claim that this is going to bring people back into the workforce. However, in all of the different instances where these kinds of work requirements have been implemented, it has actually not led to any additional people entering the workforce, and instead has only kicked people who are in the workforce already. 2/3 of Medicaid recipients are already a part of the workforce, it has kicked them out of their coverage, out of their healthcare coverage. That's all this does is just paperwork designed to stop people from being able to receive these fucking life-saving government the life-saving government healthcare that they need.
Unable to get through the bureaucratic system to get it. Those are the sorts of things that 18 months from now, I think, are going to play a big role in whether there is true negative political impact from this bill among the very voters that Donald Trump brought to the
You
GOP.
mentioned those Medicaid work requirements, also adding veterans and former foster youth to the work mandate for food stamps. And one that interests me, cap on student loans for kids and their parents will also take out loans. The House Republican from Kentucky, Tom Massey, who's been kind of a thorn in the side of the caucus, opposes the bill still. And the president is threatening to primary him. And here's what that sounds like.
Well, I just don't think he does a good job for the country. He's always a no. I call him Rand Paul Jr. He's always a no. Nothing constructive at all. I mean, just terrible.
Are you seeing people head for the exits? I don't know if there's anyone left to head for the exits under the threat of primary. Are we actually going to see any real opposition here?
I mean, I think in the case of Massey, he is a very strong conservative. This is not a case of like a moderate who doesn't really know what to do with Trump.
We're talking fiscal conservative.
Fiscal conservative. He, in the last iteration of his back and forth with Trump, he was saying, I've always been America first. I've been MAGA before MAGA. So in his case, it's going to be interesting to see. He represents a very conservative district, and Republicans still haven't figured out exactly who they would have primary him. We've seen that Elon Musk has said he's going to throw a lot of money into that race. So that'll be an interesting one to watch.
Hey, everybody, I guess you want a progress report? I don't know.
Do you have the vote, sir?
We are working through everybody's issues and making sure that we can secure this vote. I feel very positive about the progress. We've had lots of great conversations. I've met with individuals and groups all day long, as has the president, who's fully engaged as well, trying to convince everybody this is the very best product that we can produce. But I feel good about where we are and where we're headed, and stay tuned. There's more conversations to be held.
Can you talk about your conversations with the House Freedom Caucus, since the chair continues to say that he's a no?
Yeah, I've talked to Freedom Caucus members. I've talked to Budget Committee members. I've talked to members from the swing districts. I mean, every caucus in the House has had the Speaker's attention. I've heard their concerns about it. And the thing about it is, when you have a piece of legislation that is this comprehensive and with so many agenda items involved, you're going to have lots of different priorities and preferences among people because they represent different districts and they have different interests. But we can't make everyone 100% happy. It's impossible. This is a deliberative body. It's a legislative process. By definition, all of us have to give up on our personal preferences. I never got to ask anybody to...
So we can unify around tax cuts for the wealthy and killing the working poor. Come on, guys. You can't make everybody happy, but there's one thing that we're here to do, which is melt the poor. Get on board. You're a goddamn Republican. This is what we're here for.
Compromise core principles, but preferences must be yielded for the greater good, and that's what I think people are recognizing and coming to grips with. And this is part of the process. It's a consensus building operation, has been from day one. This is the culmination of 14 months worth of work, and I believe we're going to deliver this, get the ball over the goal line. So stay tuned.
All right. On that note, let's bring in Democratic Congressman Richie Torres of New York. He's a member of the Financial Services Committee. Congressman, always good to talk to you. Let's pick up that conversation about Medicaid cuts. I think it's important to bring these massive bills that can get so confusing and have so many different things in it to the street level. Let's go to the South Bronx and the district you represent. If this bill passes through the House, as most people expect it will, what does that mean for the residents?
Wait. He represents South Bronx? Is that a district of Tel Aviv? I'm confused. It's shocking because as a Richie Torres fan, I look at his output all the time. I love how he tweets. And he's always tweeting about Israel, so I just assumed that he was a representative of the District of Tel Aviv. Interesting.
Residents of the South Bronx, for the people in your district.
Have you been to Brooklyn or the Bronx in your life? Yes. Also, your name is Roll Tide Alabama fan. Of course, dude. What the fuck? Like, you're not talking about like fucking Missouri. You're talking about Brooklyn or the Bronx. Of course, I've been to both. I went to Alabama, but I'm from Flatbush. Roll Tide. Actually, fuck that chatter. War Eagle. War damn Eagle. Hell yeah, baby.
Well, look, the so-called big, beautiful bill represents a betrayal of the working people of America, and nowhere more so than in the Bronx. When America sneezes, the Bronx gets the flu. The Bronx is going to be the hardest hit by the $1 trillion cut to Medicaid and children's health care. It's going to destabilize every healthcare provider, every hospital in my district. I have the highest rate of Medicaid enrollment in the country, 67%. So more than 70% of children, more than 80% of nursing home residents, more than 90% of baby deliveries are covered by Medicaid, which is going to be gutted at the hands of Donald Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill. So it's a catastrophe for the working people of the Bronx.
You know, we've heard when challenged on this, leadership and members of the Trump administration dismissive of kind of what you laid out right there and said there's a lot of bloat in our entitlement system. We're merely making it more efficient. We're taking some of the burden off of the federal government. How do you respond to the claims by Republicans that say, oh, the concerns about this bill are overblown? It's going to create an economic explosion with these tax cuts.
Interesting. Richie Torres, who is, who was supposed to be a progressive when he first ran, BIPOC, bisexual, progressive congressperson, is over here talking about Medicaid and how poor his district is. His district is the poorest in the country. Now, it's odd because most of his advocacy revolves around reappropriating funds to a country that actually has comprehensive free health care. Israel is the country I'm talking about. So that Israel doesn't have to waste a single dollar on their own defense. We got that covered for them so they can spend all their money on their own health care and their free college. So confused by Richie Torres is, he's not bi, he identifies as gay. Oh, I thought he was bisexual. My bad. Sorry. Confused about this messaging because he's constantly talking about how much money Israel needs.
It's at the top of the economy for wealthy people. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all the revenue that Republicans expect to generate from the cost cutting is simply going to be cannibalized by the higher interest payments on the debt. So the legislation at its core is a radical redistribution of wealth from the poor to the rich and from the American people to bondholders. And second, it's going to make Medicaid less efficient. So the work requirements on paper are actually paperwork requirements in practice. Experience tells us that work requirements simply leads to more paperwork. In 2018, the state of Arkansas put in place a work requirements program causing 18,000 people to lose access to health care. The majority of those people were working people who were eligible for Medicaid. And so experience tells us that work requirements will simply cause people to lose health care. It will simply bureaucratize Medicaid.
What does this mean for you politically for the next 2 years? J. Mart was talking about the cost of this to Republicans in the midterm elections. How do you see this playing out for Democrats? What should Democrats be doing? How should they be talking about this bill?
Look, the Republican reconciliation bill is not only bad morals, it's bad politics. I mean, it's going to cause 12 million people to lose their health care. It's going to slash Medicaid by $1 trillion, which is the largest health care cut in history.
In your district, how will people feel that between now and the midterms?
I think people will feel an overwhelming sense of betrayal.
Yeah. Okay, can we switch to the midterms on New York State? Because you're thinking about, obviously, your own political future, Congressman. The LG of New York, Antonio Delgado, is already in the race challenging incumbent Governor Kathy Hochul. Where is your head on next year? And are you planning to run for re-election or thinking about statewide still?
I'm unlikely to run
for governor.
I feel like the assault that we've seen on the social safety in the Bronx is so unprecedented, so overwhelming that I'm going to keep my focus on Washington, D.C. So my heart lies with Washington, D.C. I feel like now more than ever, we have to fight the catastrophe that is the Trump presidency.
Well, that's news.
On the question...
It's not, because he said he won't run for governor if Zohran wins mayor. That's what the reason is.
Mamdani, we have spoken to Abigail Spanberger, Alyssa Slotkin, Hillary Slotkin from Michigan as well.
God. Oh, thank God. Let's get to the issue that really matters. Zohran Mamdani. And all of the worst Democrats that you just fucking rattled off, half of them literally CIA agents, okay, are very upset. All the fucking big movers and shakers in the Democratic Party. Incredible. Here's a remarkable stat showing the Zohran effect. The account Richie Torres hasn't tweeted either the word Israel or Hamas since June 18th, 14 days ago. That is the longest stretch by 7 days that Torres has not tweeted one of those words since October 7th, 2023. Wow. Wow. Mamdani mania. Delivering endless bounty here. Why'd he stop posting about Israel so much, bro? I thought that was the most important constituency. Huh. No, what is he, anti-Semitic? He started again after this tweet? Oh my God. That is fucking insane. That's so much money, dude. What the fuck?
Over the course of the last week, we've asked all of them what they think of his race. All of them have said they didn't want to touch it. They didn't want to say, They didn't want to comment on New York politics. But our politicians, our Democratic politicians who are not looking at that race and trying to learn something, if not about his policies, about the way he communicated his policies, missing something. It doesn't sound particularly authentic to say this guy is up there running, but we don't know it in the New York City, but actually we're not going to comment on how he ran.
I feel like there's a difference between praising the man and his policies and praising the manner in which he ran his campaign. I mean, when it comes to how he ran his campaign, like he's genuinely a singular figure. I mean, he turned out 200,000 voters ages 18 to 44 for the first time were 50% of the electorate in New York City in a mayoral election. It was the highest turnout from 1989. Like, we do have an obligation to learn from his race. And I suspect he won not because...
Yeah, it's because he said, fuck Israel. Israel can suck my dick. He said, Israel can lick my dick and my balls. And everyone under the age of 50 was like, I love that. This is a message that is resonating with me. Yeah, what do you make of that? What do you make of that? Richie? Bend the fucking knee, bitch. Obviously, I'm joking. That's not the only reason. But that does definitely play a major role. Anyone that says Israel didn't play a major role in improving Zohran's standing as a singular force, as a person who was capable of cutting away from all the noise, as an earnest campaigner, is wrong. And in the case of Richie, he's wrong because he's paid to be wrong. And in the case of all the Democrats, actually, as well, they are paid to be wrong on this. They are paid to try and desperately make this issue either invisible or an issue where you can only say pro-Israel shit. Oh, this is a good take. Good take. Jay Mershon. By the way, AIPAC spent $4 million in mailers against their opponent in the 2022 primary. How AIPAC isn't about Judaism, Exhibit A. I remember this now. Okay, this makes sense. Her opponent was Jewish. Haley Stevens is not Jewish. Stevens beats Levin in Michigan with over $4 million worth of help from AIPAC. The debate helped them farm clips on Israel. The debate NBC mods helped them with all those follow-up questions. No, I like, even for people that are not as like laser focused on Israel and its genocide like we are, right? For a lot of people, they kind of understand, even the most like under a rock, I was just in a coma and just woke up as individual, they have seen that Israel's doing a lot of things that they consider to be pretty violent. Maybe they don't see it as genocide or whatever, but they're like, yeah, this is like kind of fucked up. But more importantly than that, for the average American, okay, they not only see that, but then they see how people are communicating. They see how big media figures are talking about this issue and trying to constantly fucking censor people or shame people for having these opinions that many people share. And that is creating a lot of negative polarization. Okay? That is creating a lot of negative polarization. At this stage, even if you are fucking not earnestly anti-Israel, saying that you're anti-Israel immediately offers you benefits. It makes you look like a real figure because it makes you look like a real anti-establishment figure. It makes you look like you are channeling the overwhelming majority's position on this issue against a sea of defenders of Israel, both in the media and in politics. Okay? Make no mistake, being anti-Israel openly and communicating that you are anti-Israel openly and earnestly only reaffirms your position as an honest person, a position as a different kind of politician than what people have seen. It is basically the Trump going on stage or in the Republican primaries and saying, I paid for every single one of these guys. I paid into the campaign funds. I bought, as a billionaire, I bought every single one of these dudes at a different point in time. That was a pivotal moment for Trump. Because while everyone understands that, this is usually not not a thing that people discuss openly, especially on mainstream media. Right now, any politician coming out and being like, yeah, dog, fuck Israel, is unironically a major benefit. Okay? The media can still try and desperately change the dynamic here. They can make it seem as though there is an overwhelming amount of pro-Israel sentiment. Actually, this is popular. This is a popular position. This is the correct position, the moral position. You could say that till the fucking cows come home. Americans are not tuning into that shit. They are not, they don't believe that shit. They're not tuning into that shit. They actually have resentment towards that shit. This new line of globalizing the intifada may work on dumb old people, sadly. Fuck no. No, it won't. I promise you it will not. The globalizing the intifada shit only comes across as a guy who never said it personally, but doesn't want to police others' language, especially because there is unimaginable violence unfolding in Israel, unfolding in Gaza. Okay? It will not work. People understand, like the attitude, the dynamic has changed. I'm telling you this as a fucking 33-year-old Muslim socialist who has been anti-Israel for the past fucking 12 years, who's openly been an anti-Zionist and an advocate for Palestinian emancipation for the past 12 years. Back in the day, when someone turned around and cynically called you an anti-Semite, your career was fucking over. You were done. People took that very seriously. Nowadays, everybody understands when someone is called, especially if they're a progressive figure, but like anyone, if someone who is anti-Israel is called an anti-Semite, even if they literally are an anti-Semite, by the way, like fucking Candace Owens or any number of different people like Dan Bilzerian and whatnot who are anti-Semitic, but because they are positioned as anti-Israel, when someone calls them anti-Semitic, most people go, "Oh, you're just saying that to everybody. I don't care." This is a dangerous part of the landscape changing dramatically. But that absolutely is not in the average person's scope of concern at all. Okay? I don't even think the old people look at this and go, "Oh, that's a scary word that he used." I don't think they give a shit. If someone is at this point more progressive or not progressive, sorry, more pro-Palestine than Israel, they don't give a fuck. That's just cope, brother. The landscape changes because Israel is reaching the end goal. This is not cope. This is the reality as far as like anti-Israel sentiments. What are we talking about? Here is Harry Enton. Regarding Mamdani in Israel, Democrats are no longer pro-Israeli when it comes to the Israel-Palestinian conflict.
Cuomo, during the primary, attacked Mamdani as being insufficient.
Democrats do not fuck with Israel, okay? It's fuck Israel hour every hour, okay? Top of the hour, middle of the hour is always and in perpetuity fuck Israel. Motherfuckers on Holy Toledo watch.
Pro-Israel. I'm not quite sure the former governor understood how much the politics have changed around this issue among Democrats. What are we talking about here? All right, who Democrats sympathize more with, Israelis or Palestinians? In 2017, the Democratic Party was a pro-Israeli party. Look at this. They sympathized with the Israelis by 13 points, more with the Israelis than the Palestinians. But look at this sea change. Now Democrats sympathize more with the Palestinians by 43 points. Oh my God, that is a change in the margin of 56 points over the course of just 8 years. So all of a sudden, it's the pro-Palestinian position that actually reigns supreme in Democratic politics, not the Israeli position. And that is part of the reason why Mamdani was able to do so well in this primary, because those attacks over Israel, simply put, did not ring true for Democrats. They're now on the side of the Palestinians, not the Israelis.
I mean, this is a...
If only there was someone who was making this argument over and over again throughout not only this past election cycle and the general election, but also certainly pointing to this reality in the Zohran race at all. If only there was a political commentator that also saw these numbers and kept repeating it over and over again, that this line of attack doesn't actually fucking harm Zohran. It only helps him, especially in the Democratic primary. This is why you pay me the big bucks at the Piker Broadcasting Service.
A much bigger issue, specifically with Mamdani, though. I mean, an outspoken critic of Israel. He's facing continued criticism, though, for not being outspoken enough against anti-Semitism, that is for sure. But on this, talk about Democrats and how broadly how this really...
This is the media desperately trying to cling on to an exit ramp here. Okay, but what about anti-Semitism? Oh, maybe he doesn't care enough about anti-Semitism, right? Like, a lot of people are mad about that, right? It's like, no. You designed the landscape to equivocate Israel with Judaism. So for the average person, they absolutely do not give a fuck about anti-Semitism at this point, because the average person sees this as a reflection of Israel. Zohran, on the other hand, and people like myself, on the other hand, do not equivocate Zionism and Judaism. And yet, people like Zohran keep getting mercilessly attacked this way. And the average Americans that see that further equivocate Judaism with Zionism, with the actions of, equate the actions of Israel with Jews across the board. After years and years and years of falsely smearing people and successfully limiting speech and successfully creating not permission structure, but like basically removing any sort of permission around being able to criticize Israel by saying, if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. Your career is gone. I will find out where you work, and I will make sure you'll never be able to retain a fucking honest wage ever again. After doing that successfully for years, post-October 7, the pro-Israel groups thought they could get away with it again. And they certainly came out hot. If you recall, in the immediate aftermath of October 7, if you remember, there were doxing vans in every college campus. Do you remember? There were doxing vans on every college campus, falsely smearing college students as vicious terrorist anti-Semites. Why? Because they participated in writing think pieces in the fucking student newspaper that basically channeled the exact same sentiment that I was saying and the exact same sentiment of the Haaretz editorial board. I'm telling you. And they kept doing that. Over and over and over again. Constantly presenting, constantly matching critics of Israel who felt a sense of disgust, understandable disgust, due to what our tax dollars were contributing to, the death and destruction in Palestine, the death and destruction in Gaza. They constantly, cynically kept saying, what about Jewish students' feelings? While simultaneously cracking down on the anti-Zionist Jewish students that were protesting against Israel as well. What about the feelings of pro-Israeli Jewish students was the real question. And I don't think anybody gives a fuck about the feelings of pro-Israeli Jewish students or pro-Israel Christian students alike. No one cares. But they kept badgering people over the head with this over and over and over again. It's the Ayup Lovely tweet that comes to mind. It's like, hello, sweetie, it's time for your daily dose of Jewish feelings. That is going to breed resentment. Even if there was a righteous cause, even if there was a righteous fucking cause associated with this, which there isn't when it comes to pro-Israel sentiment, obviously. But even if there was a righteous cause associated with this, the constant fucking pandering and the constant fucking bludgeoning over people's heads with this shit would have created enmity regardless.
really is shifting.
Yeah, so, you see this among Democrats overall, right? But we know that Mamdani's base was younger voters within the Democratic Party. And so I want to break it down
with younger Democrats.
Correct. So take a look here. Who age 18 to 49 Democrats sympathize more with, the Israelis or the Palestinians? Again, in 2017, younger Democrats sympathized more with the Israelis by 14 points. Look at this shift now. Palestinians, they sympathize more with the Palestinians by 57 points. That is an over 70-point shift in the margin in just a matter of 8 years. So the bottom line is, Mamdani's base within the Democratic Party and the base of the Democratic Party of younger voters, younger Democrats, have changed tremendously on this issue in 8 years' time. I rarely ever see shifts like this, Kate, in which you see one.
Yeah, I wonder what happened. Almost like there was a live-streamed Holocaust that caused people to pay close attention for the first time in their entire lives without the media contextualizing exactly why this live-streamed Holocaust was an absolute necessity, and how if you dared to question the necessity of this live-streamed Holocaust, that you were a vicious anti-Semite that might go to jail, that should go to prison. Yeah, it kind of does that. It does have that effect when you watch parents pick up the remains of their children and like shove them into fucking plastic bags, plastic grocery bags, after an American bomb eviscerated a fucking home or a school or a mosque that these children were inside of. When they see that over and over again for 634 days, that's going to create a lot of animosity towards the country that's doing it. I warned people about this many times throughout the past election cycle. There's a reason why so many vote blue no matter who Kamala girlboss dipshits still come into this chat and act as though I was trying to hurt Kamala Harris's chances of winning the election, or somehow I undermined Kamala Harris when I was warning the Democratic Party to change trajectory, recognizing how different people's attitudes actually were on this issue.
One side of the equation leading by 14 points 8 years ago, and then all of a sudden the other side of the equation leading by 57 points. The bottom line is the politics around the Israelis and the Palestinians have shifted tremendously among Democrats, and they've shifted specifically tremendously among Democrats who are under the age of 50, younger Democrats who are Mamdani's base, and also the base of Democratic socialists like himself, like Bernie Sanders, like AOC. They have just shifted more so than I think that anyone could possibly have imagined, say, 8 years ago.
I think another thing that this does is also it makes it impossible to fucking argue against. Like, you can't argue that the overwhelming majority of Americans are just like deeply anti-Semitic. Like, your Jewish nieces and nephews are actually deeply, deeply anti-Semitic. You can't do that. Like, that's it. Like, the next generation of American Jews are also on board with this wave. There are more anti-Zionist Jews now than there have ever been in the past 50 years. Okay? It's over. It's done. Especially when you look at the next generation of Jews in this country. So good luck to people who want to defend Israel on the virtues of anti-Semitism. A recent letter to Trump demanding he pressure Israel to end its starvation of Gaza, a letter, mind you, not an actual law, only garnered 18 House Democrats, 8% of Dems, and 0 Dem senators. Bernie was the only signatory. This gap is widening and increasingly impossible to brush off. Establishment activism and big donors are doing their best to ignore Gaza and vibe through it. Millions being poured into establishment-friendly abundance pablum, etc. But this will boil over electorally. A base cannot watch nonstop slaughter for 22 months and it not matter at all. Even, the sea change is so apparent that even fucking r/world news threads that used to come up with the most Hitlerian takes about Palestinians are actively fucking pro-Palestine now. Even the worst of the worst NatSec libtards have fucking turned around and said, honestly, this is a shameful experience. We got to put an end to Israel. Like, what the fuck is going on? Think about that. Half of those motherfuckers are at Langley, dude. They will arrive at every single conclusion that we've been at, despite their aggressive opposition to it, with enough time. Okay. Yeah. Once enough time has passed, once the dust is settled, everyone will be against this. They will act as though they were always against this. The same people that spent every waking moment talking about how, Hasan, you love the Houthis, you're a fucking terrorist, you love Hamas, you're a fucking terrorist. Every single person, when enough time has passed, will arrive at the moderate conclusions that I arrived at with respect to Israel's overwhelming cruelty in its genocide and those who were brave enough to resist against said genocide, abiding by a moral principle. Just wait. If it doesn't happen in this year, it will happen when 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, we will have a very different assessment of history. Just wait. But what is interesting is that there is no new information. We have known the hospital bombing for over a year. We have known of the targeting of healthcare professionals for the last 6 months. So why are they shifting now? What broke? Maybe there's a partisan element associated with it because a lot of liberals are only ready to oppose something when like their ideological opponents, Trump, are on board. That could be part of it. There is every day that this kind of atrocity, every new day where there is a new fresh hell creates an even larger permission structure. Remember, I'm sure there's plenty of people in this chat, even right now, that think twice about what they have heard of my commentary as it pertains to these scary Islamic style extremist terrorist organizations. I'm sure there are still plenty of people who think like, Hasan, I agree with you on the Israel stuff, but I can't get myself over the fucking finish line in terms of like lending any sort of support or any sort of defense to groups in the region that have actively fought back against Israel's genocidal ambitions. Okay? There are plenty of people who maybe in the last couple of months that have changed their mentality on this. They will continue to change their mentality on this because once people recognize what genocide truly means, they understand why people are fighting against it. That's it. I think also the direct shooting of people in lines for food with an American NGO is more covered by the news as well and thus spark mind change. Sure, it could be any number of different reasons.